In this lesson, I want to consider how we can set up and use the import of users from an Active Directory server using LDAP. This is a very useful feature for larger implementations which may have many users to add to the system, and there is a need to automate the process as much as possible. It'll involve connecting to an Active Directory server and using the LDAP protocol to load the user details into Sage CRM. It works best where some thought has gone into setting up user templates beforehand and creating the email templates that can send those users a standardized welcome email. It can also be used in the context of IIS auto login, so that users who have been logged into Windows will automatically be able to access Sage CRM without having to enter their own logon credentials into another system. This can also simplify the process of setting up Exchange integration by ensuring that users' details are common between Sage CRM and Microsoft Exchange. It may also help to answer some basic questions first, before I discuss the actual usage of the Active Directory provisioning features. So those basic questions are: what is LDAP? What is Active Directory? And how does the import work? And as we go through, we can consider some other ideas. How does this relate to IIS auto login? And what does this mean for Exchange integration? What is LDAP? Well, LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It's an open standard that provides a common way of describing how users and resources can be addressed over a network. So if many systems are connected to the network and they all validate their user information from the LDAP server, then if a user logs onto one system, those credentials can be used to prove their identity to another system by cross-referencing against the LDAP server, and that's the idea of a single sign-on system. Active Directory is Microsoft's network directory service for Windows. An Active Directory domain controller provides the means to authenticate all users and devices in a Windows domain. The network directory services provided by Active Directory is used by the Sage CRM IIS auto login feature, and Active Directory itself uses LDAP to allow for the addressing of resources. So LDAP, although it's a standard protocol, nevertheless is a complex area, and much about LDAP is very vendor specific, Microsoft versus Oracle versus Sun versus Novell, and deals with how individual implementations would be done. The key would be for anyone thinking about LDAP is to get their heads around binding and domain networks and how the data is structured, but for the purposes of Sage CRM, we only have to think about LDAP in the context of Microsoft Active Directory. So only importing users from Active Directory via LDAP is supported as far as Sage CRM is concerned. The process of this import is manual rather than automatic, so it should be understood as an import of users rather than any form of continuous synchronization. If new users are added into Active Directory, they would have to be added into Sage CRM as a subsequent import. The import needs to be broken down into a number of actions. So we prepare for the import, we set up during that preparation the user template, the email template, and we consider the IIS auto login. We then carry out the import, and then we would go ahead and we would configure Exchange integration where it's being used. During the importation of the user details from the Active Directory server, you're going to be given the option of linking the users to a user template, a CRM users template. And imported users would inherit their team, their security profile, and other preset information from the Sage CRM user template, and so considerably reduce the hassle of the setup of a large number of users. And email templates should also be set up in advance, and though the setup of email templates is discussed in detail in another lesson. So how does this relate to IIS auto login? Now, I've discussed IIS auto login in the lesson which provided an overview of system security. When a user logs into a computer that is part of a Windows domain, Active Directory will check that the submitted password is valid. That allows Sage CRM to use the Windows logon to authorize its users. Within Sage CRM, we would have to enable the users by setting the flag use IIS auto login, and you can see that this is done within the administration users user configuration screen. Now, where the flag is set to yes, then CRM uses Windows NT authentication in IIS to validate the user. Once the user is authenticated with IIS using their Windows password, that user is looked up in the Sage CRM user table. The user password in CRM is ignored since the user has already authenticated with Windows using their Windows password. If the authenticated user is not found in the CRM user table, then an access denied error message is returned to the browser. But that's not really about Active Directory provisioning, except if you're importing users, then you'll need to consider how these users then log on and what password is required. The import starts by selecting Import Users from the menu, Administration Users, and then click Import Users. You're going to need to provide the address of the LDAP server and provide the administrator credentials that you need to access the directory trees. Once the connection is made, you can then navigate through the nodes of the directory tree to find the user list you want to import. You can search for users making use of the % symbol as the wildcard. Any values that you enter are considered to be start with searches, so the wildcard is automatically applied. You need to be aware of the number of users in your system and what is the maximum allowed by your license. If in the licensing session there is a message about the number of seats available and the maximum number of new users that can be imported into the CRM system. And please note that these screens only allow for the importation of active users, and resource users would actually have to be manually added. Now that's a terminology that resource users are users within Sage CRM which do not consume a license, but nevertheless are selectable to apply work to or can associate with communications. The third step of the process allows you to decide on the password to be used. Of course, if you're going to be using Sage CRM IIS auto login feature, then this is academic, as I mentioned earlier in this lesson. But you can also link the imported users to the user template that you want to apply and the optional automatic welcome email. The welcome email can be automatically generated to all imported users that gives them their username and password and a link to log on to the system. And the template is controlled within the administration, email and document screens looking underneath the email templates area. The import of users from Active Directory is useful within an environment which uses Exchange and where integration with Exchange is needed for Sage CRM. If you have a look at this image that I've got on the screen at the moment, The usage of Active Directory provisioning within Sage CRM can simplify matters considerably by allowing the importation of Exchange users shared and administered by the Active Directory server. You can see how you can bring the users across so they're all set up in advance for any then going on to link them to Exchange integration as well.